Okay, we're back. Part 2. So we left off right when he is saying that he's going to take her into dinner. And she says, I'll have plenty of time to transplant some of these sets, I guess. She heard her husband calling Scotty down by the barn, and a little later she saw the two men ride up on the pale yellow hillside. Very weird again, right? Pale yellow. Sad yellow? Dead yellow? What does pale yellow mean anyways? In search of the steers. There was a little square sandy bed, underlined bed, kept for rooting the chrysanthemums. Rooting, that's also a sexual word, right? Like, what are they doing? They're rooting? With her trowel, phallic symbol, she turned the soil over and over, smoothed it and patted it firm. Then she dug 10 parallel trenches, into Mother Earth, by the way, yonic trenches, to receive the sets. Back at the chrysanthemum bed, by the way, she pulled out a little crisp shoot, trimmed off the leaves of each one with her scissors, and laid it on the small, orderly pile. Now, what we just witnessed is a birthing scene, actually, right? Because she's giving life to Mother Earth. She's transplanting these flowers. And you notice that the energy has changed because she's not mad anymore right now. She's being really gentle with these shoots. A squeak of wheels and a plod of hooves came down the road. Inciting force, guys. So all of this has been exposition, the status quo. Something has to be the trigger of change. We call this inciting force for the rising action to even take off, right? It has to be something that changes the dynamic of the story. Eliza looked up. The country road ran along the dense bank of willows and cottonwoods and bordered the river. And up the road came a curious vehicle, curiously drawn. Remember what we said about the author repeating words? Curious, curiously, foreshadowing. Who's going to be curious? Now, curious in this context means kind of weird, right? But it's also a hint to the reader that we should be curious about why he's coming. And probably the protagonist is going to be curious. It was an old spring wagon. And for those of you who don't know what that means, that's like the Little House on the Prairie wagon that looks like this, right? That's horse-drawn. Okay. With a round canvas top on it covered like a prairie schooner. It was drawn by an old bay horse. See how many times we're seeing old horse and a little gray and white burro. Second time that we've seen a combination. Gray and white, fog and rain, house innocence versus black tragedy in Mother Earth. The big stubbled beard man. Oh, yeah. Okay, watch this now. Here we have the wagon. Canvas top. Sitting on a bench. And we have a gigantic guy right here with his horses. Big beard. Do we know anything, by the way, about her husband, what he looks like? I don't remember. Did you see anything about the husband, what he looks like? I don't think so. But here we go. Ready? A big, stubbled, bearded man sat between the cover flaps. Yonic flaps. Phallic man. Okay. Drawn the crawling team. Crawling is a little bit of a strange description too. They're horses, right? Horses don't crawl. Crawling is a pretty yonic sexual position. Underneath the wagon, between the hind wheels? Are they the back wheels, the rear wheels? No, the hind wheels. That's a body part, people. Okay, that's kind of weird. Hind wheels. I've never heard that in my whole life. A lean and rangy mongrel dog walked sedately. Words were painted on the canvas in clumsy, crooked letters. Pots. That's yonic, by the way. Pans. Yonic. Phallic. Knives. Scissors. Phallic. Lawnmowers. Now, this is fascinating. Lawnmowers are this combination because they've got phallic and they are yonic. They bring in the dead grass, right? Fixed. What does he fix? He fucking fixes broken pots. And she's a closed-off broken pot. Now, how about that for some crazy? 2 rows of articles and triumphantly definitive fixed below. A black paint had run down little sharp points beneath each letter. Now that's pretty interesting too, because it's going to look like this, fixed, and this has dribbles, long like phallic. This big bearded phallic man coming in a yonic wagon is going to come fix broken pots. Gosh, Steinbeck, you couldn't have written this. I mean, is that intentional or accidental, guys? Crazy. Okay, here we go. Eliza squatting on the ground. Oh my gosh. So I was saying she was just bending over. She's squatting. Squatting is a birth position, people, in most of the world. Okay, squatting. She's squatting on the ground, watching to see the crazy, loose-jointed wagon pass by. So she's watching it, right? But it didn't pass. It turned into the farm road in front of her house. Crooked old wheels, squirreling and squeaking. This is auditory imagery, and it's a little bit like mimicking a sound of a broken bed. And we know this because even the prairie schooner it's called an old spring wagon. So it makes this bouncing noise, right? So we're getting visual, we're getting auditory. The rangy dog darted from between the wheels and ran ahead. Instantly, the 2 ranch shepherds flew out at him. Then all 3 stopped, and with sniff and quivering tails, with taunt straight legs, with ambassadorial dignity, they slowly circled. A lot of weird body language happening there. Quivering tails, taunt straight legs. Couldn't he have just said the 3 dogs met each other? Or the dogs growled at each other? But he's giving us graphic description of how the dogs are greeting each other. Sniffing daintily. The caravan pulled up to Elisa's wire fence and stopped. Not near, not over. He pulled right up to that fence and stopped. Now the newcomer dog, feeling outnumbered, lowered his tail and retired under the wagon with raised hackles and bared teeth. The man on the wagon called out, that's a bad dog in a fight when he gets started. Elisa laughed. What? She's laughing? Like, that's not even funny. But she's laughing. There's a joke. There's a turn. There's a change. That trigger of change brought a trigger of change of emotion. Because she was mad, and then she was caring, and now she just is laughing. I see he is. How soon does he generally get started? The man caught up with her laughter and echoed it heartily. Sometimes not for weeks and weeks, he said. Okay, now we need to stop for a second before we even finish this paragraph. Because what does this guy do for a living? Yes, he fixes broken pots, but besides that, he's a tinker. That means he sells things. He's a salesman. And it's his job to sell something. It's his job to make some money. And you can't forget that, okay? This is a stock character that has an archetypal job to do. And we've got to watch how he does his job. She starts laughing first. And what does the story say? The man caught up with her laughter. Maybe he didn't think it was funny, but he's going to laugh now because she thinks it's funny. He climbed stiffly down over the wheel. Was that necessary? Stiffly? Sexual weird? The horse and the donkey drooped like unwatered flowers. Unwatered flowers? Are you serious, Steinbeck? Flowers phallic? Unwatered, as in neglected, isolated, closed pot kind of unwatered? Elisa saw that he was a very big man. Although his hair and beard were graying, there's that word gray again, he did not look old. His worn black suit was wrinkled and spotted with grease. His laughter had disappeared from his face and eyes the moment his laughing voice ceased. His eyes were dark, and they were full of brooding that gets in the eyes of teamsters and sailors. That's pretty fucking sexy, right? That's romantic, teamsters and sailors. The calloused hands He rested on the wire fence, was cracked. He's touching her fence. Hello? What did her husband do? Her husband leaned over it. This guy's just touching it. He's touching her fence. And every crack was a black line. He took off his battered hat. Took off his hat even. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Not to mention, I have no idea what her husband looks like. And now I know exactly what this guy looks like. He's in her personal space. I'm off my general road, ma'am, he said. Does this dirt road cut over across the river to the Los Angeles highway? Elisa stood up. This is the first time we've seen her standing, by the way. We've only ever seen her straighten her back, right? And shoved the thick scissors into her apron pocket, phallic and ionic. Well, yes, it does, but it winds around and then forwards to the river. I don't think your team could pull through that sand. He replied with some asperity, it might surprise you what them beasts can pull through. Is there an innuendo there? Like, is he flirting with her? When they get started, she asked. He smiled for a second. Yes, when they get started. Do they have a private joke about the dogs sniffing each other's rear ends or what? Isn't that weird? This is the second time we're seeing her laugh and now she's making a joke? Very, very shady behavior. Well, said Eliza, I think you'll save time if you go back to the Salinas Road and pick up the highway there. He drew a big finger down the chicken wire and made it sing. He's not just touching her fence, he's making it sing. We have a very romantic scene here. We've got music, we've got flowers. Man in a suit took off his hat. I ain't in a hurry, ma'am. I go from Seattle to San Diego and back every year. Takes all my time. About 6 months each way. I aim to follow nice weather. Now, there's some irony, too. Was the weather nice the last time I checked at the beginning of the story? It said that the sunshine was pale. The fog wasn't letting anything in. They were totally isolated. This guy's full of garbage. He leaned confidently over her fence. Maybe you noticed the writing on my wagon. I mend pots and sharpen knives and scissors. You got any of them things to do? Oh, no, she said quickly. Nothing like that. Her eyes hardened with resistance. What? Hardened with resistance? He just asked you if you have any pots and pans or scissors. But we all know that she knows that she's a broken pot. And so she's resisting that kindness, right? Because she likes chopping things down. That's been her MO, probably for the better parts of 15 years. Oh no, scissors is the worst thing, he explained. Most people just ruin scissors trying to sharpen them, but I know how. I got a special tool. This is when my brain says, sure you do, fella. It's a nice little bobbit kind of thing. And patent it, but it sure does the trick. No, my scissors are all sharp. That's funny, guys. Because she's been identifying as a man this whole story, and she's telling him, back off, my scissors are sharp. Like, that's funny. You should laugh right now. Now it says, his face fell into an exaggerated sadness. Okay, don't forget he's a salesman. His voice took on a whining undertone. I ain't had nothing to do today. Maybe I won't have no supper tonight. You see, I'm off my regular road. I know folks on the highway clear from Seattle to San Diego. They saved their things for me to sharpen because they know, this is funny, how I do it so good. Yeah, we know you do it so good. And save them money. I'm sorry, Elisa said irritably. I haven't anything for you to do. Now, that could be the end of the encounter, right? Scene cut. But he's a salesman, and if we cut the scene, the story would be over. So he has to go to his next thing, and that is every salesman has to find common ground to pursue their goal. His eyes left her face and fell searching to the ground. They roamed about until they came to the chrysanthemum bed where she'd been working. What's them plants, ma'am? The irritation and resistance melted from Elisa's face. Oh, those are chrysanthemums, giant whites and yellows. I raise them every year, bigger than anyone around here. Do you raise flowers or do you grow flowers? You raise children, you grow flowers. Ding, ding, ding. Back to the closed pot. Back to why there are no children. Back to why she has nothing else to do. Back to why the house is white. Back to why, right? This reinforces it again. Kind of like a long stem flower. Looks like a puff of smoke. Colored smoke, he asked. That's it. That's a nice way to describe them. They smell kind of nasty till you get used to them, he said. Okay, guys, come on. You're all over 18, right? Flower smells kind of nasty till you get used to it. It's a good bitter smell, she retorted. Not nasty at all. He changed his tone quickly. I like the smell myself. I had 10 each blooms this year, she said. Now they're bragging about you-know-what size. The man leaned further over the fence, into her garden, by the way. Look, I know a lady down the road a piece, has got the nicest garden you ever seen. Got nearly every kind of flower, but no chrysanthemums. Last time I was mending a copper-bottom washtub for her. I'm thinking naked washtub. That's a hard job, but I know how to do it. Good. She said to me, if you ever run across some nice chrysanthemums, I wish you'd try to get me a few seeds. That's what she told me. Do you believe him? Or you think he just made that story up because he's looking to sell a pot? Right? Is he using her weakness against her? And how sad is that we know that, but she doesn't. That's called dramatic irony, when the reader becomes aware of something, but the characters in the story are not yet. Elisa's eyes grew alert and eager. There's that word eager again. Very strange. She couldn't have known much about chrysanthemums. You can raise them from a seed, but it's much easier to root the little sprouts you see there. Oh, he said, I suppose I can't take her none to her then. Why, yes, you can, she cried. She cried. Yes, you can. I can put some in damp sand and you can carry them right along with you. They'll take root in a pot if you keep them damp, and then she can transplant them. Sure, she'd sure like to have some, ma'am. You say they're nice ones? Beautiful, she said. Oh, beautiful, her eyes shone. Why is she so excited and animated right now? It's because she's talking about her babies, guys. She's stuck in this valley. She can't leave, but her kids can. Now, all of us should be able to relate to this. We all want our kids to get out. And if you're the kid in the scenario, your parents want you to get out. We want you to explore. We want you to grow. The last thing she wants is for those babies to stay in her little stupid garden in this little stupid valley, right? So this tinker now represents a way for her to get out, for her kids to get out. And that's really important. Her eyes shone. She tore off the battered hat and shook out her pretty hair. And I'm like, what? Now, this is a big deal because for the very first time, that pot just came with the lid off. We see her feminine symbol, her hair, right? The lid of the pot is off. Pretty hair, pretty dark hair. That's big stuff. I'll put them in a flower pot and you can take them right with you. Come into the yard. She just invited him into her flower bed. Bed being the operative word, right? While the man came through the picket fence, Eliza ran excitedly along the geranium-bordered path to the back of the house, and she returned carrying a big red flower pot. Ionic symbol, but more importantly, red. Passion, love, protection. Then she picked up the little pile of shoots she had prepared. With her strong fingers, she pressed into the sand and tamped around them with her knuckles. The man stood over her. We know that she's like hunkered down doing this. And what's he doing? He's like standing over her. Isn't that weird? Weird. I'll tell you what to do, she said. You remember you can tell the lady. Yes, I'll try to remember. Well, look, these will take root in about a month. Then she must set them out about a foot apart in good rich earth like this. See? She lifted a handful of dark soil for him to look at. They'll grow fast and tall. Now remember this. In July, tell her to cut them down about 8 inches from the ground. Before they bloom? He asked. Yes, before they bloom. Her face was tight with eagerness. They'll grow right up again. And about last of September, the buds will start. She stopped and seemed perplexed. It's the budding that takes the most care, she said hesitantly. Why is she hesitating, guys? She's getting ready to tell her secret. She's getting ready to make love with this guy. She's giving her babies away. They are getting ready to make life right now. And she's hesitating because that's all she's got is her chrysanthemums and her secret about how to grow them, right? She wants to give them away, but she's not so sure. I don't know how to tell you. She looked deep into his eyes searchingly. This next line kills me. Her mouth opened a little, and she seemed to be listening. I'll try to tell you, she said. Did you ever hear of planting hands? Can't say I have, ma'am. Well, I can only tell you what it feels like. It's when you're picking off the buds you don't want. Everything goes right down into your fingertips. You watch your fingers work. They do it themselves. You can feel it, how it is. They pick and pick the buds. They never make a mistake. They're with the plant. Do you see your fingers in the plant? Do you feel that? Right up your arm? They know. They never make a mistake. You can feel it. When you're like, that you can't do anything wrong? Do you see that? Do you understand that? She was kneeling on the ground looking up to him. Her breasts were swelled passionately. He's leaning over her. She's looking up like this. There's a moment here, right? Now, rumor has it, I can't verify this myself, but when I was in my MFA program for creative writing, I was told that this scene inspired the scene in Ghost, where Demi Moore is playing with clay, and Patrick Swayze comes behind her and puts his hands around her, and they're playing with the clay. Supposedly, the gods say that scene comes directly from this scene in Chrysanthemums. This idea that the man's leaning over her and playing with the plants with her, and she's saying, can you feel it? Can you feel it up your arm? And she's looking up at him. There's love here because probably, maybe, perhaps, for the first time, somebody's taking an interest and the only love she's allowed to have, right? The man's eyes narrowed. He looked away self-consciously. He knows that this is serious business now. Maybe I know, he said. Sometimes in the night in the wagon there. And I'm like, what? That's how you know that we're not imagining anything, because they went from plants to wagon at night. Right? There's a sex scene happening here over the chrysanthemum bed. Says, Elisa's voice grew husky. She broke in on him. I've never lived the way you do, but I know what you mean. When the night is dark, why, the stars are sharp, pointed. We've heard those words before. There's a quiet. Why, you rise up and up. Every pointed star gets driven into your body. It's like that, hot and sharp and lovely. Kneeling there, her hand went out to touch toward his leg in the greasy black trousers. Her hesitant fingers almost touched the cloth. Then her hand dropped to the ground. She crouched low like a fainting dog. Is she crouching low like a fainting dog? She's in heat? Is that what he's saying? Or she's ashamed? Or a combination of both because she really, really wants some? He said, it's nice, just like you say, only when you don't have no dinner it ain't. And I'm like, what? What an asshole. He's going right back to the sales pitch? And she's like feigning dog position? And all he's thinking about is his sale. She stood up then, very straight, and her face was ashamed. Why is she ashamed? Is it because she was vulnerable? Is it because she's reminded of what she doesn't have or can't offer? Maybe what she wants? She held the flower pot out to him and placed it gently in her arms. That word gently is so important, right? Because this is emotion word. That's a heavily connotation word again. Here, put it in your wagon on the seat where you can watch it. This is how we know that these are people to her, right? She's not saying put it as cargo. She's saying it's a passenger. It's going to sit on that bench in front of you. maybe I can find something for you to do. So if all he wants is sales, all she's going to give him is sales, but she's still going to let her babies escape. And that's probably a big deal. At the back of the house, she dug out a can pile, and found 2 old, battered aluminum saucepans. She carried them back and gave them to her. Here, maybe you can fix these. His manner changed. He became professional. Why did his manner change? Oh, maybe because he got what he wanted? Because he wants to fix broken pots? Good as new, I can fix them. At the back of his wagon, he set a little anvil, and out of an oily toolbox dug a small machine hammer. Elisa came through the gate and watched him while he pounded. I think this might be only second or third time we've seen her leave her little flower garden, right? Came to watch him while he pounded out the dents of the kettles. His mouth grew sure and knowing. At a difficult part of the work, he sucked in his upper lip. Now, this is also a different kind of sex scene, right? Because this is his masculinity fixing a physical pot. He's taking out the dents. He's refining it. He's fixing a woman. Okay? A little bit ironic. Right in the wagon, man. Oh, okay. Then it says, you sleep right in the wagon, Elisa asked. And I'm like, what? He's banging on a pot, and she's still thinking about boinking him in the back of that wagon. You see that? She goes right to the wagon. Right in the wagon, man. Rain or shine. I'm dry as a cow in there. It must be nice, she said. It must be very nice. I wish women could do such things. What is she talking about? Sleeping on the wagon or traveling the globe? Not being isolated, not being trapped in that valley. It ain't the right kind of life for a woman. Her upper lip raised a bit, showing her teeth. How do you know? How can you tell? She said. Because the truth is, isn't this a tough broad? Imagine what it is to know that you can never have children. You can't leave your husband. Divorce wasn't a thing back then. You can't go and work secularly because that wasn't a thing back then. And all you have to do is live your life. That takes a steel inside of you. Have you ever had a dream that you wanted and you have to make peace with not getting it? That's called strength, right? That's endurance. And so this chick, she's stronger than what he is giving her credit for. She's saying, you sleep in that wagon, but I have to stay in this broken little stupid valley of a pot. How do you know? She says. I don't know, ma'am, he protested. Of course I don't know. Here's your kettles, done. Now you don't have to buy new ones. How much? Oh, 50 cents will do. I keep my prices down and my work good. That's why I have them satisfied customers up and down the highway. Right? Innuendo, innuendo, innuendo. Elisa brought him a 50-cent piece from the house and dropped it in his hand. You must be surprised to have a rival someday. I can sharpen scissors too. And I can beat dents out of little pots. I could show you what a woman might do. Innuendo, innuendo, innuendo. We're going to stop it there, part 3, and wrapping it up.